Today we're going to do cheese sauce, and I've discovered a few things. Cheese sauce for the freeze dryer. I'm kind of excited about this one because this is going to solve a lot of problems that I've had in the past about using these box dinners, and I never thought that this would turn out as well as it has. So stick around, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one. I'm Evan Rowell, and this is Critical Thinking about cheese sauce. Okay, so before I get started, I kind of want to give you a little bit of background about the fact that I needed to do a video like this and talk about cheese sauce. Because for me, if any of you know or follow me, you know that I'm all about preparing meals that are kind of one package meals that has everything in it. And one of the things that I lean on quite a bit is these prepackaged meals here. This is cheeseburger macaroni and whatnot because it has pre-measured macaroni and a sauce packet and everything that you need in here, except for the hamburger, of course, and I freeze dry hamburger and put it in there. But the other day I went down and I was at Walmart and I saw these artisan crafted meals and they were on sale. I was able to pick them up for about $1.58. And so I picked up about 6 of them, and when I got it home and opened one up, I was a bit dismayed to find this. Inside the packet is a kind of liquid cheese in here. At least that's what they call it, is cheese. I can assure you there's very little, if any, cheese in this packet at all. And so I'm thinking, well, let's go ahead, and I weighed it and squeezed it out and put it in the freeze dryer. And for about, 25, 26 hours it came out, and I was extraordinarily disappointed. This is what I got right here. This is the #1 indicator for me that there is very little, if any, cheese in there at all. This is all oil. This is oil, and it's still, I can feel it, it's greasy, and by golly, it is salty. It's tasty, okay? It almost tastes like cheese leather. You've heard of fruit leather? Well, this would be like cheese leather. But man, the salt content in there is through the roof, and they make it so that it's tasty, but it came out and it wouldn't dry. It's pliable, and I just don't want it. I don't want to put this, I don't want to feed my family this stuff, and I never really thought about it. I had never freeze-dried one of these packets before, but that got me thinking. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way that I can put these meals together without using phony cheese or cheese product or cheese spread. And so I got to researching, and I got to looking around and trying different things. My first go-to was Velveeta. And I was going to melt some of that, mix it with milk, and doing all this other kind of stuff to it. And it didn't work because Velveeta isn't real cheese anymore. Okay? It has a lot of oil in it. And I was thoroughly unimpressed with the results. So I'm going to cut to the chase here, and I'm going to show you here what I have finally come up with. And not only did I figure out how to make cheese sauce in a freeze dryer, but I stumbled across a way to avoid having to use even this here. Inside these boxes, you always got this dried flavoring packet. And so what that did was that opened up the door to me to not even using these things. Even macaroni and cheese doesn't have to be used anymore. I'm able to just put together the noodles and this cheese, and I've got it so that it's flavored. And it's just opened up a whole new world of freeze drying possibilities for me as far as being able to prepare food that's good to eat. And by the way, you sprinkle this on vegetables. You ever have a hard time getting kids to eat their vegetables? You sprinkle this, especially the stuff that I've flavored, and they'll love it. So my wife, after I did my first successful batch, she saw it and she goes, wait a minute, and she ran down and she got one of these bottles. She saves these just for this type of a purpose, and she says, I want some of that. And of course, I was more than happy to let her fill up a bottle. and we sprinkle this on different things. It's wonderful. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to show you how I make this, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is to caution you, you're going to need a double boiler, okay? You don't want to melt heat the milk and the cheese and everything. You don't want to do it directly on your range, because not only can you scorch it, but you can cause it to curdle. And there's a way to handle that, but it's kind of a hassle. But so I use a double boiler, but then I had a problem because I don't have a double boiler that's big enough to hold, you know, 1.25 gallons or 5 quarts of liquid. So what I do is this. You can see here I've got a pot, and you can see here, well, I'll put this pot inside of the larger one, and there's about that much water in here. But then when this goes in there and gets pushed all the way to the bottom, that water rises halfway up. Okay? And you can see it's just floating around in there, and that makes a great double boiler. All right? And here's a picture of it. You can see the pot here, and you can see that the water in there, it's already boiling. But because this isn't a standard double boiler, you still want to keep this off the bottom of the pot. Now, this is my canning boiler, and it comes with a little spacer. Okay, now that's what I'm going to use. But if you've got a big pot like this that doesn't have a spacer in it like this, you can use this. This is a high-temperature silicone spacer that you can actually put down in that water on the bottom, and it'll hold this pot off the bottom of this one, and it'll greatly reduce your susceptibility to scorching and to curdling. So here, okay, so I'm going to put this in there, and you can watch me do that. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there, and you can see that's going to go right to the bottom, and we'll put the pan in, okay? Now water's already boiling, and so the first thing we want to do is we're going to add 7 cups of whole milk to this inner pan. I have 7 cups of milk here, and you can see that sits that pan all the way down into the bottom. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to wait for that milk to start to get scalding or boiling, scalding hot, okay? And so we'll come on back here in just a minute when that milk is hot, and we'll continue. Okay, now that didn't take very long for that milk to become scalding hot. The water around the outside of that inner pan is boiling, but the milk inside is not. But it is as hot as it's going to get. So the next thing we want to do is to actually add the cheese. Now, to 7 cups of milk, and I've tried this a couple different ways, I add the cheese. Now, the nice thing about this is you can use any cheese you want that's semi-soft, like cheddar cheese or mozzarella cheese. I think you can use mozzarella cheese. I haven't tried it yet. But any of your white cheeses or whatnot. And you want to put all 5 pounds of this shredded, and I use sharp cheddar cheese, into that milk. And you start mixing it around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and just dump it in there. Okay. And it's not going to take very long before that cheese in there melts. And that is pretty standard, pretty typical of what you're going to get when you mix milk and cheese together. But we're going to embellish this specifically so that we can freeze dry it, and it'll come out and be able to granulate into a kind of a sandy powder, and it's just delicious. You're going to have to see that. So we need to wait for this cheese to completely melt. It'll take about maybe 5 minutes for it to melt to where I want it to be. See, it's already beginning to melt up a little bit, but it has to be completely solidified. Okay, and I'm going to have to stand here, and I should mix it often. I don't have to stand here and mix it continually, but it should be mixed quite often. So let's give that about 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. All right, it's been about 10 minutes, and that cheddar cheese has completely melted into that milk, and they have solidified together. And so now we're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, now If you've seen my video before on cheese, you know that one of the secrets to doing cheese is to make sure that it's adequately shredded up before you freeze it and try to freeze dry it. Because if you don't, you come out with blocks of hard cheese. You have the blanket effect that happens to your cheese, and there is a specific way that you need to do it. Well, you can't shred this up. Okay, when this is done, you're going to pour it directly into the pans and freeze it. And because I'm going to embellish it, I'm going to create the situation to where that cheese will freeze dry in that pan, and when it comes out, you'll be able to break it up. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But the two things that I add to it are, first, I add 2 cups of Parmesan cheese. And that's going to help keep that cheddar cheese in there from sticking together and forming hard blocks and everything, and it adds wonderful flavor. This is just absolutely a must, and so you need to have 2 cups of Parmesan cheese. Now the other thing that I put in there is I'm going to put in 3 cans of this Campbell's cheddar cheese soup. Now, the fact of the matter is, they call it cheddar cheese soup, and I guess it's legal to call it cheddar cheese soup because there is some cheese in this. However, it's less than 2%. If you read the back, it says the ingredients are watered, modified cornstarch, and wheat flour. Okay, and then it says contains less than 2% of cheddar and semi-soft cheese, milk, you know, and whey, salt, sugar, potassium, and all the other stuff that they like to put into here. So I'm not putting this in there for the cheese content. Okay, we got plenty of cheese content back there. What I'm putting this in here is because it does have the cornstarch and the wheat flour. And you're going to need that. That's going to assist greatly in our ability to process this cheese once it's freeze dried into a powder like this, a sandy, you know, about the consistency of a fine sand, into a powder, and it reconstitutes wonderfully. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to start with 2 cups of Parmesan cheese. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump this Parmesan cheese right into this milk mixture and stir it in really good. And again, we don't have to have the heat up really hot. As a matter of fact, this will make it a little easier to work with because it'll start to thicken it up a little bit. Okay, now we've got that mixed up in there real good, and I am going to turn that fire up just a hair. I want to keep that water hot without it boiling anymore. But that right now is exactly what it should look like, and it's really looking good, and it's the right consistency too. So now we're going to go ahead and put these 3 cans of Campbell's cheddar cheese soup, you know, the cans that don't have any real, well, less than 2% real cheese, but it does have other things inside there that will help you, when it freeze dries, convert it into that granulated powder. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Just open it up. And to be honest with you, this doesn't even look very appetizing. It's kind of an off yellow color. And so I'll go ahead and put this in there and mix it in. And I'm going to put the other 2 cans in there, so I'll be right back. Okay, now I put all 3 cans of that Campbell's soup in there, and I've mixed it around. And it's looking exactly as it should. It's nice and thick. It's kind of soupy, but a rich, hearty soupy. It's not really water, but it's looking really good. But you know, that Parmesan cheese in there still kind of gives it a little bit of a gritty texture because the Parmesan cheese doesn't want to melt. So I have a little something I do here, and you can use a blender, you can use a food processor. I like to use this. I like to use this my thunder stick, and I'll stick that down in there, and I'll move it around, and that'll tend to make it a little bit creamy. You can see here where it is liquefying that cheese, and it's going to get rid of some of that texture. This works really well, but like I say, you can dump this into a blender, food processor, whatever you want. But I'll do this for a couple of minutes. So let me go ahead and continue doing this, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, now that that's done, We've mixed all except for one of the ingredients in here that we're going to do. And that is, we're going to flavor the cheese now with 4 different flavorings so that I can put all this cheese into 4 different pans. And the results, I'll tell you, they're heavenly. Okay, this cheese sauce can replace all of this. It can replace this for sure. I'll never eat one of these things. Now, you can be sure of that. It will replace this because we're going to put the flavoring directly into the cheese, and then I've worked with it, and I know that it works. And so, actually, all I have to do is come up with some noodles in the right proportions, the cheese sauce, embellish it with whatever vegetables and meat that I want to embellish it with, and I don't have to buy these anymore. I can make them myself, and they won't have any of the oil and the crap or whatever else that they like to put into here. Okay, so this is going to be a lot better for your family to eat. But anyhow, so what we're going to do now is I'll go ahead and take this spoon out of here, is I'm going to take about 5 cups. Those trays will hold about 5 cups. And so I'm going to take this, and it's going to get a little drippy, but that's okay. And I'm going to separate out about 5 cups of this. There we go. That's, all right, that's a little bit more than that. Okay. That's almost, okay. Anyhow, that's a little more than 5 cups. Oh, it's so good. So I was thinking, what am I going to do to replace this packet here? And what I've done, what I come up with is I was walking around the store one day, and I saw this. This is a McCormick. It's called One Sheet Pan Chicken Parmesan. Now, I've already used this one time, and let's see, it's right here. One of these pans, when it's done, will fit into a 1-quart jar. Now, that's only 4 cups, but remember, you're losing a lot of water in here, so it's going to be a lot more condensed. But I'll take and cut the label off of this, and I'll tape it to the jar along with the instructions across the bottom of the jar on how to reconstitute it. For this one, it's add 4 tablespoons of hot water to 1/2 cup loosely measured cheese. Mix and let stand about 10 minutes. And it says the mix ratio is 1 part water to 2 parts loosely packed cheese. And so I've got 4 quarts or 1 gallon. And the ones that I've used is on this one here, I use this wood-fired chili. And this, again, this cheese is absolutely wonderful with this wood-fired chili. Now, the thing that you're going to notice about it is that the seasoning is going to be kind of strong in the cheese. But remember, you're using this cheese to put into a casserole or a pot of noodles or meat or something else. So you're going to want the cheese to be kind of strong. So I'm not going to use this one or this one in here because I've already done them. This one I did. This is sharp cheddar. I simply used granulated dried garlic. I put about maybe 1/2 cup in there and mixed it around, and the garlic flavor just comes through like you wouldn't believe. And there's no chemistry in here. There's except for what you're going to get in that Campbell's soup. But this is absolutely wonderful. And then I've got the one that I didn't add anything to it. This is just the sharp cheddar. There was no flavorings in it. And I'll show you how I'm gonna grind those up. So for this one, I bought 3 of these Grill Mates. These are again McCormick, but this one is smoky apple wood. It's a marinade mix. This one's garlic, herb, and wine, and this one is mesquite. Okay, so we're going to start out with the mesquite, and you just dump the whole package in there. Okay, don't worry that it's too much. It's not. Ah, that smells good. You dump the whole package in there. Then we'll mix it up. mixes up really well. It takes just a few seconds for it to soak up the moisture from the cheese and start to mix in there. But you'll notice that you'll begin to see the color of the cheese change with this wood-fired chili. You can see the little specks of seasoning in here and the flavor. And I'll tell you what, I can smell that right now, that mesquite marinade mix in with that cheese. And this makes it a very unique cheese. This isn't just another cheese sauce, and it doesn't have all the garbage in it that this does. So we're going to go ahead and put that and pour that now into my tray. Like I say, the tray will hold a little over 5 cups. Now that's plenty full, but I tried this and it freeze dries wonderfully. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you right here. This is one that was actually freeze dried. I think this was the garlic, but you can see that's absolutely, oh brother, I'm making a mess here. That's absolutely dry, and it crumbles wonderfully, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside right here, and I'm going to do that with the rest of that cheese, and I'm going to fill up all 4 of those pans. I'm going to do the garlic and herb, I'm going to do the smoky applewood, and I'm going to do another one with garlic, just straight garlic. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. Just granulated garlic. Okay, it's going to go into one of them. So let me get to that point. And before I do, I want to show you how easily this grinds up. You can see here I have my food processor. Okay, and what I do is I will break this up. I'll put this in here, and I'll break it up inside the bag first. Just a little bit, and it does. You can crush it with the palm of your hand. Okay. So that'll kind of give it a start when I dump it into the food processor. Okay. And this stuff, it grinds up just great. And I'll put it on there. Now the thing is, you don't have to worry about going too long. You just watch it until all the big pieces are powderized. And there you have it. That is absolutely wonderful. And what I do is now, this was the rest of this one. This is why this one wasn't completely filled up, is I take a jar filler and a spoon. I put it in here, and I'll simply take and I'll scoop this out. And you can see just how wonderfully powderized that is, but it's not like talcum powder. It's still got some texture to it, but boy, that's great stuff. And here's something funny. As I was doing this, I noticed that it develops a little bit of what the industry calls fluidity, which means there's something about the ionic characteristics of the cheese after you've done this to it that it'll ride air currents. It's very, very light. Let me go ahead and put that there. And now I have this. This is a brush, and I use it because it's got a flat end on the back side of it. And I will start to push that down in there. I want to pack that in there a little bit, but I don't want it to be really, really hard packed. But I do know from experience that the one pan will fit into 1 quart curd jar almost perfectly. Okay, and then I can put this on here, and now I have my sharp cheddar cheese, and I have 1 gallon of cheese here, a cheese sauce. My wife, out of this batch that I do, probably won't let me put it all in jars. She's got a couple more of these empties that she's going to want to put some of the flavored cheese into. She's just as excited about this as I am. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and fill up these other trays. I'm going to go ahead and get them in the freezer. And it takes about maybe 30 hours to get the cheese out. And then you break it up and put it in your blender or in your food processor or whatnot. Grind it up real good. Put it in jars, put it in shaker bottles, and use it. This is one thing that I'll probably end up only storing about half of what I make, because my wife has discovered it. She loves it. I love it. We both love it, and we'll be using it. So with that, I hope that you learned something here. I hope that you'll try this recipe, and so that you too can discover just how wonderful this cheese is. Okay, and I have reconstituted it. I took a half a cup of this out of the last batch, and I put in 4 tablespoons of water and mixed it up, and it only took about 10 minutes, and it was right back to the consistency that you see here. Okay, as a matter of fact, it was a little bit thicker, because that's one of the other things that that cheddar cheese soup will do, is it will cause it to become a little bit creamier, a little bit thicker when you reconstitute it. So it's a wonderful way to do things. It's an absolutely wonderful cheese sauce, and how many different flavors you can get is limited only by how many different seasoning packets that you can get. And it doesn't have to be, you know, like this. It can be just about any brand. This is a different brand here, and different flavors. Experiment, you know, cut them in half so that you can try 8 different ones, and then you put a divider inside. So with that, again, I hope that you'll like and subscribe. I hope that you enjoyed my efforts here. And maybe if you have a mind, you'll visit my gallery. I am a professional photographer, and I love to hear what people have to say about my work. So with that, I'm Evan Rowell, and this is Critical Thinking about cheese sauce.